So let's start from the beginning and talk about Kundalini. If you look in Google up or read a book about what Kundalini is, you will find different definitions depending what source you are, what source you found, right? And yes, we know about Kundalini being a female goddess, Shakti, or there are other names for that goddess. Or in a more clinical way, you can you can find a definition that says that it's a distinct electric current appearing in going along the spine. If we reach for definitions from someone like Gopi Krishna, a person who I think he mostly was very prolific in 60s, 70s, and maybe even earlier. I'm not quite sure. But his idea of Kundalini was that Kundalini is everywhere and it's consciousness that's everywhere. So it really depends. Sometimes I hear from people that they think that that Kundalini is sexual. It's all about sex. And yeah, so in my experience, and that is a part of the whole system that I was able to observe. That's, as I said, it's not far from a subtle body system. In my experience, Kundalini is an individual unit of consciousness. So if you want to experience that, it's really easy. Everything that you know, everything that you can think of, everything that you imagine, everything that you feel, your body, your mind, anything, your imagination, as I already said, your past, your future, your knowledge, all that you are aware of, one way or another, it's your consciousness. And that consciousness, and I was able to experience that, and no doubt that some of you were able to experience that as well. We all experience it to different degrees. We sometimes experience Kundalini rising without even knowing what it is. But Kundalini is indeed coiled up. I think it's Kunda, it's coiled up, circled. And my first experience of that incredible phenomenon was when I suddenly saw a tube of rainbow light that seemed to be coming out of me. And that was at the time when I agreed, I surrendered to commit suicide. I just opened my eyes from having them closed and getting ready to get up and do what I thought I was going to do. I opened my eyes and then I saw that. And yes, indeed, Kundalini, as old India, wonderful mystical knowledge tells us, is coiled up at the bottom of the spine in the sacrum area. So our consciousness is here. It's not here. It's not in the brain. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Kundalini is in an individual unit of consciousness. It is your spirit. Spirit and consciousness is the same thing. Spirit has no form and no attributes, no qualities. It's just consciousness. But once it lodges itself in the body, that it creates also at the same time, there is no time in those. This phenomena don't have time only in certain areas, but otherwise these things happen without the measure of time. So Kundalini creates, or actually spirit, let's say spirit, before it becomes Kundalini, an individual unit of consciousness, it's just the spirit itself that lodges itself in the sacrum area at the bottom of the spine. As soon as spirit has the body and has that material world and all the other worlds that we'll be talking about in a minute, it acquires certain attributes. And there are 3 attributes that our spirit acquires. It's survival, sexual, and creative. So that's what is Kundalini in the body. That's my definition, and this is how it all works really, really well when we go further into the exploration of the subtle body. Chakras. Yes, as we already mentioned, energy centers, energy vortexes, that's fine. And this view and the explanation of chakras as the energy centers in the body located along the spine comes from the 6th chakra, the 3rd eye. Some of us are able to see it, not many people, but some, and obviously in old India that was a tradition, and tantric practices were allowing for development of upper chakras. Therefore, it was known how the subtle body looks like, and through that 3rd eye, through the 6th chakra, you'd be able to see colors of particular chakras and see that whole system. The way I saw chakras, that time I didn't believe in chakras. I didn't know the word Kundalini. But I didn't see them as energy centers. My consciousness, my Kundalini, arose and came out of my body, showed itself in front of me, scared me. I wanted to run away, but I couldn't because it was a part of me. And I had to decide to sit and watch what will happen next. And the experience of the phenomenon of Kundalini rising happened within about 25 minutes, half an hour. And my consciousness was visiting different dimensions of perception. This is how I was able to name. This is how I named what was happening. My consciousness was moving through those dimensions. And today, and since some time, soon after my experience, I was able to put it all together, connect the dots. And I call chakras the gates to the dimensions of perception. Each dimension that has different quality, each dimension operates on different principle, and each chakra opens us up to a different dimension. And this is how our individual unit of consciousness, that's basically survival, sexual, and creative, this is how that Kundalini that we are is able to live and experience life through those different dimensions of perception. So through the first chakra, the root chakra, we enter material world. As you know, this material world is there for us 24/7. When we sleep, we maybe don't know it's there, but otherwise, through the third chakra, which is the mind and will, the mind is here. This is just brain. So we will know that the material world exists, right? We feel it. Our bodies belong to the material world. The second dimension we are able to enter through the second chakra. And although the second chakra has been considered for thousands of years sexual and creative and emotional, that's not my experience and understanding. In my understanding, I see the second chakra as just emotional. It really simplifies and allows for clarity of understanding of this whole system and helps to focus on clearing up that chakra if you know that it's just emotional, and it truly is just emotional. The fact that we experience heightened emotions with Kundalini rising, just a little, just if it rises just a little, we can feel it. And if it rises to the area of the second chakra, we can feel emotions very strongly. And sexually also, the sexuality, our sexuality expresses itself in the first and second dimension and in all other dimensions. If the chakras are open, we can experience the nature of our incredible being that's so able and magical, but we are not always experiencing that, right? And this is where I would like to move on to the matter of ego, because we started about the first chakra, which is taking us to the material dimension. The second one is taking us into emotional dimension. So we can relate emotionally to others if our emotions are close. If we are happy and someone else is happy, we really get it, right? If we are unhappy and we find someone else who's unhappy, we connect. If we are in the same place with the person who is a friend or being next to us, we are in the physical dimension, close to each other. We feel that material being. We feel the cold, we feel the heat, we feel pain, physical pain, and so on. Touch, smell, we see, we hear. That's all the physical. The first chakra takes us into that physical dimension. And now let's go to the third one. This is the mind and the will. In this chakra, we collect all our mental structures that we were conditioned to naturally absorb, learn, since we started to think as little toddlers. There is also an element of past lives, but that comes a little bit later when we get to the sixth chakra. Let's just focus on this first three. So we are conditioned to think in a certain way because of our environment, because of our background. And our will is also relating to the first three dimensions the most. And if our upper chakras are not developed enough, because that's what very often happens. Sometimes we have one upper chakra open and developed, sometimes two. Seldom all four of them. And most of the time, you were interested in this talk, so you are already experiencing glimpses. You must have been experiencing some glimpses of upper chakras, at least. Some glimpses of worlds that are more than material, emotional, and mental. So ego is the dominance of the first three dimensions. We all have, 99.9999% of humans will have the first three chakras developed. On top of that, they're like almost, not that they're overdeveloped, but they're congested. The emotional one is congested with emotions, and these emotions, they stay there unless we clear up that chakra from the emotions. But because we don't separate the emotions from the mind, we can never clear them up. We just can grow the ego by growing knowledge about diseases and the different terminology about psychology and so on. And I'm not putting down our science and psychology. It's important, maybe entertaining, but it does not help us to. It does not help us in spiritual growth. And the reason is, and this is very important, the reason is that we understand everything through this mind, through logical, linear thinking. And since science does not have a grip on spirit, does not accept ghosts, for example, they don't exist, no, or has no acceptance of chakras, and especially the upper ones, has knowledge of brain, which is the first dimension, right? Brain and all this intricate world of what brain does, and all these tiny little things, all our nervous system and everything. This is all the first dimension. So it does not really explain consciousness from the viewpoint of Kundalini, an individual unit of consciousness, which is an incredible being, right? It's an immortal being, and we'll get to that in a second, because here we are in the first three dimensions, and as you know, most people understand life from that perspective, be it just individual ego or group ego or whole humanity ego. It's just seeing life from the first three, through the first three chakras, experiencing the first three dimensions. And where is love? Love is here. Our consciousness needs to move up. And some of us have that chakra open, and we feel the need for more love. We understand that it's important, and all the concepts that come with it, like truth, justice, help, support, home, surrender, devotion, and there are many, many words that come with that concept. Somehow it's hard to find them in these three dimensions, because these dimensions they don't really include it. Then we have the fifth one, which is, we can enter it with sound, music, performance, dance, rhythm, but also telepathic connection, exchange of energy. This is exchange of energy. This is the collective consciousness, very often understood as, collective sense of enlightenment or out-of-body experiences, meeting with all kinds of beings that don't necessarily have bodies, human bodies, or maybe animal spirits, UFOs, aliens, Pleiadians, Arcturians, or whoever, all kinds of beings out there, angels, archangels. There are many, many, many different creatures out there without bodies, and that's all the fifth dimension. So we can learn a lot if we are connecting with some of those beings, and we can also reach for information. Information is there about past, present, and future. Everything is. We can investigate into all of that. The sixth dimension is the next step. This is an individual investigation into vision and intuitive understanding of vision. And although, visual arts are there to show us that magical aspect of our being, in the same way as performance and music are also showing us these God-given talents, we don't normally accept or know about upper chakras being present in our life, and they are. If they are open, they will help us a lot. And this is what my purpose is, to help training the lower chakras so we are not completely stuck in this reality of the first three dimensions, stuck in our kind of human predicament where we are overwhelmed emotionally and our minds are not letting us be free. We are stuck without being able to have our minds work for us, because you are not your mind. I mean, Eckhart Tolle is talking about that clearly. Buddha was talking about that. You're not your mind. You are Kundalini, the individual unit of consciousness that has an incredible mission of not just sitting here where our consciousness is kind of half asleep, just because we are only relating to these first three dimensions, but we can move up, the Kundalini can rise. But the thing is, it is possible to arouse Kundalini, but if the chakras are not cleared, and if they're not developed, if they're not open, it can end tragically. So this is not what I'm teaching at all. What I'm teaching how to clear the lower chakras so Kundalini can get through this congested energy in the second and third mostly, and how to cultivate and develop the upper ones. We have to develop the seventh one too. And in our materialistic culture, we are not taught in school to think philosophically and to just observe without trying to do something with what we're looking at. That's the third chakra, responsible for what to do, when to do it, how to do it, what we should do in order to secure better survival, in order to live better, etc. But it doesn't really, our beings don't end here. Our beings are magical beings that if they get to here, if the consciousness is able to move through all these chakras and explore and understand thoroughly all these dimensions that are on the way, and if we get to the sixth one of intuitively deciphering our vision, then at the top of the sixth chakra, we can experience self-realization. This is after our consciousness realizes the illusion of the ego. This is after our consciousness realizes that time is a concept. Time is actually a sub-dimension of the third dimension of mind and will. If we didn't have time, our minds wouldn't be able to figure things out at all. So the story that we live is based on this understanding that we have in the third dimension. If our consciousness is able to break through each of these chakras, if they're developed well enough, if they're open, then here we become consciously who we really are. That is, Kundalini self realizes as an immortal soul. Each of us is a soul that's immortal, but without having these chakras cleared up and the upper ones open, Kundalini cannot really experience it. To hear it from somebody like me or someone else that you are an immortal being, it's not enough. It's just could be clogging your third chakra. We need to practice training the lower chakras, including the first one, which we train through movement, through movement, to heal, through good nutrition, through taking care of environment, and through exercise that brings prana into our systems. into our physical bodies. You guys probably know about that more than I do because that knowledge is very evolved about yoga, nutrition, and all kinds of stuff that have to do with the first dimension. And I am helping to understand the whole system of our multidimensional consciousness, where we learn to train the lower chakras so we can control our emotions and not be maybe tormented by them or depressed or not be anxious, not live in fear, not live in anger. So many of us get angry so often, right? And it's always because something happened, right? I know that very well too. Something happened, and it's the mind that is telling us this and this and this and this happened. Logically, it's obvious that we get upset. And then what? Well, we have to separate the chakras, understanding of what is the dimension of emotions, deal with emotions separately. What is the mind? Narrow the focus to one thought. Takes practice, but it works. Surrender that one thought. It takes practice, but it works. Learn who you really are from that perspective of know thyself. Who are you? And then learn the process of self-inquiry that will allow for understanding the nature, especially of the 6th and 7th chakra. In the meantime, there is help coming from here, exchange of energy, healing is in the 5th one, and heart, of course. Without open heart, without the 4th chakra open, we're not going to get anywhere either. We can have the 6th chakra open, let's say, but if the lower ones are congested and this one is not functioning well because it's closed, and we can just become religious fanatics, right? And we know about that. That's not good. Usually it's not very good. So this is basically it. I explained about what, in my view, Kundalini is, an individual unit of consciousness that acquires attributes of survival, sexuality, and creativity. There is a lot more that we can say about that, but this is just a short meeting. I teach that, and I teach that preferably in my course called Higher Self that has 8 modules. The first module is an overview, which we kind of touched upon today. The second module is about emotions and how to train the 2nd chakra so we clear those emotions and they don't bother us, because we're not our emotions, we're not our mind either. The 3rd session or module is about working with mind. The 4th one is to tapping into the heart chakra and understanding that, getting really full understanding that love is a dimension of perception, and we can tap into it at any time and feel it any time and have the shelter in that dimension if we are troubled, if we feel unhappy and can't shake it off. Love is there. Each of us is loved madly. just like we always want to be loved. Each of us is loved. Fifth one, we can get help and understanding and support from all those other energies that are there, and we can also help others. In the sixth one, we can understand deeper concepts and esoteric sciences like astrology, numerology, I Ching, archetypes, gods, religions. So much, so many layers in the sixth dimension. Abstract understanding, conceptual understanding is there. And we don't learn about that. We don't learn about any of that. And I'm teaching that. Teaching the sixth dimension. It's very, very rich, magical, as they all are. These lower ones are magical too, but it's hard for us to see it because that's the mundane reality. And then developing the seventh one is very important. Without it, our Kundalini actually can go all the way up and then get stuck here. And I had someone explaining to me once that yes, they had the Kundalini rising experience, and they could feel their Kundalini banging inside their head against the lid, the seventh chakra. It's very different one than the sixth. Six has many layers, and the seventh one doesn't have many layers. It just bursts open through the self-inquiry. This is all a little bit, could be too much for now. I just wanted to explain what is Kundalini, individual unit of consciousness, your Kundalini, how through this ascension through the chakras, we can reach self-realization, and Kundalini becomes consciously an immortal soul. And the obstacle to it being in ego and being stuck in that reality of what our mind is telling us. We have to tell our mind what to do instead of being the other way around. And I teach that too. So please take a look at www.moniquerebel.com, my website. Go to services and check different options. You can contact me through the website. You can schedule orientation session, and we can talk about whatever, we'll have. It's 30 minutes, but sometimes there is more time because I don't have other meetings afterwards. So it's let's talk. Let's talk. I know you guys very often know a lot, so it may be a very interesting conversation. If you want help with emotions, with mind, with Kundalini rising, with cultivating upper chakras, with understanding, exploring upper dimensions, I'm here for you. Thank you so much. Thanks.